Hey everyone, this is our first Go Teen Writers Live of 2018. We are super excited to talk about writing and to answer some of the questions that we've received over the last few months. In the future, moving forward, what we think we're going to do is just as you guys have writing questions, you can email them to us. That contact information is on the Go Teen Writers website. You can also, if you're a Go Teen Writers Notes subscriber, you can always hit reply to those emails and ask your writing questions as well. So, Shannon, do you want to read our first question today?
Yeah, I think today we have one question that'll take up most of our time, and it was submitted by Sarah R. And this is what she's asking: what is one writing memory you hate to love? And she says that's a difficult circumstance or event that made a positive impact on your career. And why is that memory so memorable? What advice would you give other writers based on that memory? Steph, do you want to answer first?
Okay. So, I actually love this question because I know when I was moving into writing and trying to get published that I thought I needed to do it all perfectly. Um, I needed to query perfectly. I needed to market perfectly. I needed to write perfectly if I wanted to be successful. And I think what all working writers discover is that you're going to make mistakes. You're going to do things imperfectly, and that sometimes outward circumstances are going to um, interrupt what you're doing, and you'll find out, hey, this isn't, I thought I was going to go this way, and it turns out I'm not. So for me, a few years ago, I was trying to come up with, I had published a few contemporary YAs, and they just weren't getting as much traction as we wanted, which is the kind way of saying my sales were terrible. And I had a conversation with my agent where she said, I really feel like I should have been able to sell you by now. And I think you should think about if I'm the right agent for you. And I want you to take some time and think about it. And I thought, I need to make this decision right away. I need to either decide, yes, I'm going to go look for another agent, or no, I'm going to stick with this agent. And we had a lot of crazy personal life stuff going on too. So I just was not in a good place. And I remember coming to Jill and Shannon and our friend Rosanna White and Melanie Dickerson and just saying, like, hey, here's what's going on. And I don't know what to do. And what should I do? And it was actually Jill who said, you don't have to make this decision right now. She said, take some time. So take your time, take time away, think about what you really want to right now. You're kind of on the cusp of making a career change anyway, maybe picking a new genre or something. So think about what you really want to write and then take some time to write it and see if she still wants to represent it. If she does, great. If not, then, that's your sign that it's time to find a new agent. So I took some time away and I thought about what I wanted to write. And I had this idea for a historical novel that I had been dying to write for a few months. But I was scared, and I was a contemporary YA author. So I thought, there's no place for me to write this. And my agent coming to me and saying that, and Jill basically giving me permission to step back from the track I had been on, is what gave me the courage to write what became The Lost Girl of Astor Street. So that was my secret project for a long time that I didn't tell my agent about until I already had the first draft done. And then she ended up falling in love with it, and we submitted it, and it ended up being published. So that is one of mine.
That's such a cool story, Steph. Jill, do you want to share yours?
Sure. I make so many mistakes. I probably have 100 stories, but and not that they're all about mistakes, but the very first one was probably the one I learned the most from, and it was probably one of the hardest because I am such a dreamer. I am a professional dreamer. I've always been a professional daydreamer ever since I was a kid. And so when I first started writing, I had already daydreamed how this was going to go. I could see it. I knew exactly how this was going to go. And of course, I fell in love with my story, and the naive person in me was certain that it was going to make me millions of dollars, just like Harry Potter did for J.K. Rowling. I was very certain, very confident in this. And off I went to my first writers conference, sitting there with this feeling in my chest, like these people don't know it yet, but I've got the story that they're going to be like, whoa, she was in our class. I just have this kind of like, my daydreams sometimes speak to me and convince me of things that are not true. Anyway, so the keynote speaker at that conference was Steve Laube, who is an agent. And he was teaching us about what a pitch is, a story pitch. When you're going to pitch your story to an agent, you're going to share your briefest one sentence concept or story, about your story in one sentence, really brief, because a lot of people will say what's your story about, and then the person who answers them will go on and on for like ever. And I had been guilty of that. We all have been guilty of that. And so he was teaching us how not to do that. And so I took notes, and then he said, we're going to have a break, and you can come up to me on the break, and everybody can get a chance to give me your one liner, your one sentence. And I was like trying to jot it down, and I thought I had something, but I think the ego and the dream was bigger than my common sense. And so I went up to him and just did the thing that I always do. I think I leave my body, because I think, oh, scary, I'm going. And then my body is left to deal with the situation on its own. And so it did what it always does. It babbled. And it did. I talked about my story. I didn't know what I said, but his eyes were glazing over. And he was doing that thing where he looks over my shoulder, like, who's next? Like checking the time. It was very awkward. I could sense that it was awkward and that things were going badly for me. I'm like, oh no, Jill, come back. We need your help. And you've abandoned us. I don't know why there's many in my story, but anyway, and then when finally I stopped talking, he said, teens, they don't like to read about missionaries. And I don't publish young adult. I don't represent young adult. It doesn't sell. And so, sorry. And I said, oh, okay, thanks. And I went off, and I was trying to hold it together because his talk wasn't over. He called us back and he kept going. But then, the ego was definitely squished, and I was sitting there in a very different posture, like trying not to cry as I'm taking notes. And then finally he dismissed us for the evening, and I went up to my room and cried because I was devastated and mostly kind of also just embarrassed, like, and shot down. Like it was like the balloon in me was popped, and I was confused. Like, what happened? There was the dream, and he said no, and I don't understand even what he said, because he talked about missionaries, and I don't have missionaries. I said Mission League, like spies, like Mission Impossible. And, obviously I had rambled, like I'm doing kind of right now, very fast. And so it was probably difficult for him to understand what I was talking about. And as I started to like just sift through my memory of what happened, and it was hazy, like I said, because I left my body. I was like scared, I'm leaving. It occurred to me that I didn't do a very good job of explaining what the story was about. And that probably was because the story wasn't finished. It wasn't done. Like, how could I explain it well if I wasn't to the end yet? I'm still working on it. And then it kind of just hit me like a ton of bricks. Oh, maybe I should finish the story. Perhaps if I respected my dream, that I didn't respect my dream. It hit me like, you don't even know what you're talking about, Jill. You thought, oh, I could be a writer. I don't have to learn how to be a writer. I just can be one because I can dream it. I don't want to discount anyone's dreams. Dreams are great, and they're great motivation for setting you off on a launching pad towards your goal. But you do have to do some hard work as to researching what that dream is going to take and learning how to do it. You don't see anyone saying, I want to win the Olympics as a gymnast, and then going and somehow getting on the floor on TV and succeeding. It just doesn't happen. You have to practice. And so it occurred to me that I hadn't respected my dream, and I could either quit or I could figure out how to do it. And I don't quit things very easily. So I was determined to figure out how to do it. So I went back down and I took notes like crazy the next day. And then I took those notes and did everything Steve Laube said to do. And it took a while. It was several years, but that terrible, horrible moment certainly did teach me a big lesson. So
I love that story. And I love that you can like look back and still be like, okay with that. You know what I mean? Like, 'cause sometimes it's like, we can't ever get past that. So,
I love the twist that now Steve Laube owns those stories, right?
Yeah.
Well, he did. And then he sold it to Gilead. So now Gilead owns them, but he's still the editor. So I wonder who will buy them next. No, I'm just kidding. But he did. He owned the Spy Kids ones. Oh, no. He gave me back the rights to the Spy Kids. I own the Spy Kids now. didn't want them after all. I'm just kidding, but not really.
I've lost you, Jill. I've entirely lost you. My story is a little bit different. To understand my story, you have to kind of understand the lead up to a book being published. And for me, I was very excited about getting these major review magazines. They get copies of your book before everyone else does, and we call those review copies. And they're sent out to these different reviewers. And I had already got a couple in that were positive, and I was like Jill said, the ego kind of kicks in. You start to believe your own hype a little bit, like, oh my gosh, like maybe I will be, J.K. Rowling. Maybe that will happen. But there was a little bit of trepidation because you're aware that, you're just aware that it could not, it's possible that it's a poor review that you receive. And so I was nervous. I was a little anxious. And it was probably the last hurdle before my book hit the shelves. It was like, I just wanted to know, how this was going to go. I was working on my next book already, trying to stay busy, but I was very curious about this big major reviewer, and it was kind of the big one. And it's a review magazine that doesn't always review everyone's books. Like, they get a ton and they just pick and choose. So I didn't know if it would even come in. So when the review did come in, because they did select my book to be reviewed by then, you know what? It wasn't positive. It wasn't amazing. I'm sure it could have been worse, but in that moment, the critical things that were said were hurtful. And the amazing thing, though, is that I didn't respond the way I thought I would. I thought it would destroy me. And I thought I would be an emotional wreck. I thought I would crawl under my blankets and cover up, which I had done before at another moment prior to this, when I had some hard news regarding my book. But so I figured I was going to have this breakdown. I was going to just fold again, and it was going to screw me up for days or weeks. But what ended up happening was almost like this lightness, like of feeling like, well, I mean, that was like worst case scenario for me, and it's happened now. So I'm kind of amazed that I still want to continue to write the next book. I'm kind of amazed that I still love my story. And this kind of almost indignant attitude came over me, where I kind of looked at the review and I thought, that might be their opinion, but you know what? They're wrong. And maybe that was just the kind of gutsy attitude I needed to kind of cope with it. My own survival mechanism kicked in. But I think sometimes we talk ourselves, we understand what the worst case scenario might be, and we talk ourselves out of trying. We talk ourselves almost into being anxious, because we know that there are some worst case scenarios out there with regards to our writing. And to me, in that moment, that was it. That was worst case scenario. I didn't care about sales. I cared about what people thought. Really important people thought about my book. I thought that was it. That was going to make it or break it. And I really wanted it to be a positive experience. And when it wasn't everything I wanted it to be and more, I found myself remarkably surprised that it didn't destroy me. And I think I just want to encourage you that maybe those things you're worrying about, you're anxious about, maybe they're not going to destroy you either. Let yourself enjoy the process and not worry about what's around the corner. I'm totally preaching to the choir, because Jill and Steph and I, we have conversations with one another where we get to air our hard moments. And Steph was able to talk about hers to you guys just moments ago. And I think if the three of us didn't have one another and didn't have our other author friends to kind of bounce ideas off of, these moments would be harder. But being able to realize that we're not going to hit rock bottom, or that even if we hit rock bottom, we're going to bounce up, that we have options, that this wasn't it, that we can still move forward in our writing career. That was huge for me, because anything I worry about now, I come back to that moment where, like, the worst thing that could happen's already happened to me. The biggest review magazine out there didn't love me. And you know what? I'm still writing. I still have an agent. I still have opportunities in front of me, and it didn't destroy my career. And I think that I've been able to take that with me through a lot of different things. Hard moment, would really rather not live through it again, but knowing that I will live through it and could live through it, changed things for me. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's a great one. That's great.
I want to add that I loved Shannon's book so much that I contacted her out of the blue because I did not know her and told her so. And that if I hadn't liked it, like that reviewer who was wrong, I wouldn't be friends with her. So
no, I'm grateful. And I learned through that process too, I was told my publishing house actually came to me and said, here's the review. They actually get it early. So they let me see the review. And they said, that, at that time, specifically at that reviewer, they actually didn't have a Christian reviewer for teen books. You could either have your book reviewed by a teen reviewer, that was their job, was to review teen books, or you could have it by an adult author who also was a Christian, would review Christian books. So you kind of had to choose. Did you want to have it reviewed by an adult reviewer or a teen reviewer, but who wasn't actually going to be reading it with a Christian worldview in mind? And so I'm aware that it kind of got an unfair shake. But you know what? It's been beneficial, I think, in the long run for me to know I could survive a moment I didn't think I could.
Absolutely. Well, and I think you were talking about how it's important to have the people to have conversations with. And I feel like that is so true, and that they are who help identify, here are the positives. This is hard, but here's the positives, and here's how you can grow from this, and here's how we can move forward together. So I think finding that community is huge.
I 100% agree. Finding your people is that's, it's funny. Sometimes the hardest things lead to you finding your people. So, look for the people who are still sticking around after things got tough. And you'll find your people.
Absolutely. Yeah. Jill, anything you want to add?
Nope.
All right.
I agree.
Well, that does it for this one then. We will see you guys next time.
See you later.